Some people say Donald Trump is a revolutionary force that won't go away. What is your perspective?
It's hard to know what he is at this point, other than someone just disrupting the normal political procedure. The things he's saying, I don't think they're revolutionary at all.
In Europe, he kind of comes across as almost a comic figure.
Mm-hmm. He does here too.
How do you see him?
To many of us. Well, people are always making jokes about him. They did before he started running for president. And I think, you know, the idea that he wasn't a serious candidate or a serious person and kind of a buffoon or a showman is the reason why it took so long for people really to oppose his candidacy. I think the rest of the Republican field underestimated him.
Are you surprised about his appeal? His success in the primaries?
Yeah, I think everyone is very shocked by it, but if you look at it in the larger context of what's going on in the United States, I think you have to look back to 2008 and the financial crisis. You know, obviously the whole world, and including this country, took a huge hit at that point, and a lot of people haven't recovered from it, the shock of that. And in times of financial stress, it's not unlikely that an authoritarian figure would come to the fore, and I'm sure that Germans understand this better than anybody.
Why do you think voters are so mad, so angry, so enraged?
White working class voters, they're angry because their livelihoods have been slowly slipping away. I'm from Detroit, so I understand the situation of these people who had wonderful unionized jobs for years, and little by little that's going away. They don't see themselves able to send their kids to college, able to have a decent life. They see the demographics of the country changing, you know, becoming a country that's going to be majority non-white, and I can't remember how many years, 20 to 30 years from now. So, you know, the country's changing, and the power is slipping away from these people, and they have really some genuine concerns and dissatisfactions with the economic climate and economic possibilities for them. So it's not just a case of people being racist and being sort of against immigrants. It's also very much a pocketbook issue of people really losing their ability to make a decent living.
Well, he talks about let's make America great again.
Yeah.
What is that great America that he's looking for?
I think it's a nostalgia for post-war America, when the country was predominant in the world and the economy was going great guns, and you know, you only needed one breadwinner to support a family. It's that idea of the old black and white television America, when things were reportedly good, you know, according to a certain segment of the population.
Now let's assume you put a character like Trump in one of your novels. What kind of a role would he play? How would you describe him?
I think the kind of novel that he would appear in would probably be satirical, and would, I mean, you have to see that he comes out of television, really, and reality TV, and the change in people's expectations about politicians that are brought about by that. He comes along and seems to embody something without really having to say anything that's meaningful. So I think you would have to write a novel that was dealing with you know, image over reality and the manipulation of the media on the common mind. What Trump is just a kind of a Wizard of Oz figure, somebody who appears and says a lot of things and makes up a kind of dreamscape that people want to believe in, and who, you know, will be shown to be just as powerless and fraudulent as the Wizard of Oz in that book. That would be the book that comes closest to my mind of the kind of thing that would describe the Trump phenomenon.
Did the political culture in America change with the rise of the Donald?
Well, it's become extremely coarsened over this political campaign. The things that Trump has said as part of a debate is, just unthinkable. It's unprecedented. Each time he does it, we're shocked, and then you get used to it little by little. It's my perception that this is the most coarse and terrible thing I've ever seen in our political process, but it perhaps does have some precedents or antecedents in our history.
Trump supporters often say they feel left behind, they feel marginalized, they feel betrayed by the political elite. What are they yearning for in Trump?
I think it really mainly goes back to economic issues. They want more money, they want better jobs, they want a sense that the future is going to be better.
But why can somebody who is at the opposite end of that...
A really rich person, you mean?
Yeah. How can he make this possible for them?
People just want it to be fixed, and anyone who guarantees that it will be fixed is sufficient. They don't really care if it's a poor person or a rich person. I think his wealth persuades people that he knows what he's doing. We don't in this country typically deride the rich. We want to be the rich, So his wealth makes people think he must know something about business. He knows about money. Hence, he will give me some money. He will figure it out, and I'll get some more money. He knows how everything works, He doesn't even have to say how it's going to work. He never has to give any plans. He just has to promise things. It's a very, simplistic wish fulfillment kind of bargain that's going on.
Trump calls himself a unifier, which sounds kind of ironic, but can he be a unifier?
I don't think so. I mean, he calls himself lots of things and lots of superlatives. I don't think he can be a unifier. I think he probably, what we'll see if he gets the nomination, is we're going to see a new Donald Trump in about, when is it, August? After August, we will see a new Donald Trump. He'll be very vicious against Hillary Clinton, but on the other hand, he'll be much more moderate, and he's already saying these things. I'll be presidential when I'm president, as though the qualities don't precede the office, as though you don't have to have prudence and a certain innate nobility and intelligence before you become president. But once you're elected president, suddenly you become presidential. I mean, it's a tautology.
So you think that he actually will do what he says, or?
I don't think he can possibly do what he says. I mean, let's take the wall, for instance. How is he, what does he have to do to build that wall? Well, he has to go to Congress and raise the money to build the wall, but he actually wants Mexico to pay for the wall, so he's got to somehow convince the Mexicans to pay for the wall. Now, they say we're not going to pay for the wall, which I think they would probably say, then he has to build it himself. If we build it ourselves, he's already failed in his greatest promise of having the Mexicans pay for the wall. So within 100 days of his taking office, he will start to have great failures, and it will no longer seem as though he can do everything.
How dangerous is the phenomenon Donald Trump?
It is, the longer it continues, the more dangerous it is. If he doesn't become president, I don't think it will have a lasting damage. Obviously, if he becomes president, there's no telling, there's no way to estimate the problems that could occur.
Who would have most to lose?
I think the entire country would have a lot to lose. I think economically it would be a disaster. Diplomatically, it would be a disaster. Be a disaster for education. I don't know. I mean, I guess if you had to point to one group, if he really fulfills some of his promises, I guess people that are affected by immigration policies would maybe fare the worst. So maybe Hispanics and Muslims obviously would have a difficult time after the things that he said. But I don't think it would be limited to those people.
What will happen if he will become the next president?
He's only got 30 or 40% usually of the votes when he's winning these primaries. So even most of the Republicans are not on his side. I think he would have a lot of opposition in Congress from Republicans as well as Democrats. I think we often complain that there's been gridlock now and that Obama hasn't been able to advance many of his policies and his agenda. With Trump, it would be even more so. I don't even think his own party would support a lot of the things he's saying.
Why is Trump constantly targeting minorities?
I think rather brilliantly realized that what he needed to do to win the Republican nomination was to say things that no one else would say. And to be, you can use the word courageous enough to say these things. And that's what he did. That's how he distinguished himself from the 17 other people that were running. He came in that first speech and made those incredible statements about Mexicans and being rapists and criminals. And it seemed like, you know, that would disqualify him immediately, and it didn't. But somehow he knew that that was going to play. And apparently he had tested this message and talked to pollsters and found out what would work, as you would if you were selling a product. You know, what do people really want? And he delivered that, and nobody else did. All these other guys, they didn't say that. It seemed like it wouldn't work, but it worked. You know, and that is where he's extremely cunning and clever. Now, whether that hopefully is not going to work with the entire populace of the United States, but it worked with the group that's voting for the Republican primaries.
What would President Donald J. Trump do to the cultural atmosphere in this country?
You know, presidents actually don't have that much influence over our economy, people should realize, and they have very little influence over our cultural life as well. So I don't think he would control anything, except there would be such a groundswell of animosity toward him and opposition to him that it might affect the culture in that way. But he would not be able to control it at all. You know, I mean, how much has the culture changed from George Bush to Obama? You know, artists go on through different administrations, and I don't see it being affected by who's in the White House particularly.
Do you have moments when you're actually fascinated by Trump?
Oh, everyone is fascinated by Trump, and I was reading today about the amount of money that CNN and Fox News is making. CNN, which has devoted their entire coverage to Trump. I mean, it's really awful. If you turn on television, yeah, all you see is Trump. Their ratings have gone up 171% because of Trump. And meanwhile, we don't know what's going on in Syria. We don't know what's going on in the migrant crisis, really. We don't know what's going on around the world as Americans, because the only news we're getting is about this one candidate and his craziness. Nevertheless, we are all riveted to the screen. We can't believe that it's happening. And I've listened to him, you know, for hours and watched the debates, and, you know, it's this carnival that it's very difficult to look away from, you know. I mean, I'm of a divided opinion about what's going to happen. And in one way, I think he's going to flame out, as everyone has said the entire time, and it'll just be like a nightmare that the body politic had, and it vanished. But every now and then, I worry that there are so many secret voters for Trump in this country. Let's say we get down to a vote between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton, we know what she is. You like her, you don't. A lot of people don't. A lot of people do like her, but that's not really anything that's going to be a change. We know what that is. Other people who are unhappy, who think, even if they don't like Trump or agree with him, they just think something's got to change. We've got to change the world. This guy is going to do it, and they feel this energy about him. when they go into the voting booth and no one knows what they're doing, they're going to vote. They're going to vote for Trump. I worry about how many people might do that in the Midwest and in other parts of the country. So I would think that the Democrats have to take him very seriously, and I think they are, and I think lots of the Republicans are taking him seriously now, because he is a real threat to getting in there. It's not just a joke anymore, and I have moments when I'm frightened. I think it'll be okay. The polls look like it'll be okay, but I have moments where I get frightened.